Kia ora, I'm Ben from Human Digital.
And I'm Steph from Q Marketing. And this is Canned, the marketing podcast.
This week, Steph and I are talking about what it means to be a CMO, who you need to make friends with on the leadership team, and key attributes CMOs need to be successful.
We look at pathways to get there, what it's really like at the top, and who needs to be on your chair team.
So tune in and learn everything you need to become a kick-ass CMO. Well, here we are, Steph. It is Sunday, and we have no choice but to record this podcast now.
Happy Sunday, Ben, and I'd like to welcome you back from Wellington, where I believe you have spent a wonderful weekend enjoying the world of wearable arts.
It has been a wonderful weekend. It was very good, and I had a great time. It was my second time at the world of wearable arts, and yeah. There were two winners that made a big impact for me. So the first one, Kushla O'Connell, she did Worn Landscape, but she actually won two awards. So she won the Te Aroa section and the Weta Workshop Award, and she put 6,000 buttons on this kind of character that was kind of glowing, and yeah, very, very deserved. Really enjoyed that award. Definitely look for photos online. And the other one they actually won the Supreme Wow Award, which was Dawn Mostel and Ben Gould. They did like a Japanese ceramic inspired pier.
Yes.
That was really, really cool. I can't pronounce it. I'm going to give it a go. Gami, I think, is the name of the work. But yeah, amazing. They do such a good job. I mean, when I used to hear about World of Wearable Arts, I used to think, oh yeah, sure, World of Wearable Arts, but it actually is. It's really impressive, and the production that they put on, and I would highly recommend going to the awards night as well, because then you get the whole fanfare of the awards. So really, really cool.
It's incredible. And I'd seen in the press earlier that they were trying to make it so that the actual show itself was kind of more interactive with the crowd this year. Did that happen?
It did happen.
Yeah.
They had the stage was a little different. It was like a triangle that jutted out really far, and then they had some runways and a couple of ramps. So yeah, there were people kind of coming up onto the stage, moving around, interacting with the audience. I was up in the stands, so we didn't get anyone close to us, but next year I think we might try and get a table.
That's exciting. And what else? Okay, so what else has been happening for you this week?
The other thing was HubSpot Connect, which was really cool. So HubSpot Connect is a APAC tour that HubSpot does. They take it to Sydney, Auckland, and Singapore. Some really good talks. HubSpot do a really good job of content. So if you are looking for good content, I mean, HubSpot is the leader, and the quality is so high. It was a sold out conference for HubSpot clients, and yeah, a lot of product, but they present their product in such a good way, and they give demos. I mean, I go to the Salesforce events as well. HubSpot does a really good job, really innovative, and it's not all just product as well. One of my favorite talks was around how marketing is broken, and they had some really good conversation about what isn't working in marketing. And a couple of key takeaways from that talk was really cutting the clutter. So there's a lot of investment that is still happening in content that no one reads.
Yeah.
And it's really important, as all of these channels are changing, search, social, to really look at what is working and what's not, and cut out the stuff that isn't, and shift spend as well. So ads that aren't performing, platforms that aren't performing, test and learn, see, is this content going to perform on Reddit? Test with customers, find out where they are. Yeah. Really, really good. And there were some resources that were shared as well, and we'll put those in the show notes, which are going to be on our new website, which is cannedmarketing.com. So yeah, check us out. We've put a bit of content up there now. We've got the episodes, so you can see the YouTube videos there, cannedmarketing.com. And we are going to be building it out, getting better at our show notes, and putting other resources there for everyone as well. What have you been up to, Steph?
Well, I was just going to build on that HubSpot thing and actually say, because you'd shared a couple of resources with me, and this links into what I've been doing this week, which is a lot of upskilling. Well, I'm attempting to upskill in AI. And so I spent 3.5 hours in this office on last Sunday trying to learn how to do it in automation. And I didn't succeed in doing that automation. And it's really hard. Like, what I want to say is I'm finding it really, it's great, but it's not as simple as saying, just build a workflow, just do an automation. So I've had another crack at it yesterday. I'm inching closer to doing it. But what I would say is that I've been watching a couple of YouTube videos, and really interestingly, HubSpot is a sponsor on one of the guys' YouTube channels that I'm watching. And there's some really good stuff in there. Like, I've downloaded a couple of PDFs. You've shared some resources with me. So yeah, I've been really impressed with what they've had, actually. So it's, all up for HubSpot. And I think they're sort of leading the charge in that space, which is awesome. And then other things for me that have been happening this week, it has been the most incredible week for me in terms of the meetings that I've had. I've probably met with 3 or 4 founders in various forms that have just been really inspirational. They've just been wonderful at sharing their stories. And there was a guy that I met this week, and he's created what he calls the Airbnb of kind of cafe space. If we all know what it's like, so I think I mentioned last week, I'm trying to find a new office space at the moment. And one of the things that you do there is you go and rent out desk space. He's created a platform on which you can go and rent out the spare space in cafes for an hour or 2 hours, rather than sitting in a cafe all day and just sitting on one latte, which kind of annoys the cafe owners. And so it's expanded out to resorts and all sorts of things. And he said there's been an unexpected increase in people in Sri Lanka wanting to basically use this platform, which has come from the digital nomad community, who are going, we want to be able to book a space for an hour or book a space for 2 hours. And so he's basically partnering up with resources in Sri Lanka to bring that live. So it was really cool. So if you are interested in this platform, it's called Perch Space. It's not an app, it's a web-based platform at the moment. So that was super cool. It was really exciting. It's been a wonderful week of meetings. And then the only other thing that I did this week was I was invited to speak on a panel about leadership through change. And one of the things that we're seeing a lot of at the moment is change. And macroeconomics, economic environment is really tough. And there are a whole lot of people in that room from lots of different backgrounds, and just talking about what good leadership looks like in change. So that was super exciting.
That's good. Yeah, it is. I think both of us this week, Steph, are feeling a bit fatigued. Yeah, it's a lot. And also the flu's going around. So, there's all of these lurgies hanging at the end of winter.
Yeah.
But summer is just around the corner, and hopefully a better economic environment as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of what's been happening in the news, what's happening in your world?
Well, just when you thought we couldn't put ads anywhere else, you can now get ads on your fridge, Steph, on your fridge. So Samsung has launched ad-enabled smart fridges in the US. And for some reason, I've been getting some ads about this family hub, which is kind of cool. So it's all about understanding what's in your fridge, what can you make with the stuff in your fridge, or you're at the supermarket and you want to know what's in your fridge, you can look in your fridge, and now they're advertising to you. So
okay, this sounds horrible. Cool. It sounds horrible, and it sounds like it's for rich people. What sort of things do we think would be appropriate to advertise? Why do I want advertising from my fridge?
Well, I think for a number of reasons. One, we're all trying to optimize our health and make sure that we have less food wastage, that we are always optimizing. And these screens that go on top of the fridges also can be used like your typical smart device. So telling you the weather, you can have other interactions, the news, it's another screen, because everyone needs another screen, Steph.
So this is the classic Internet of Things, right? This is what we're referring to here. This is literally interconnected devices watching your every move. This is where we're at.
Very much. And there's cameras everywhere, Steph, inside your fridge even now.
Just what I need in the middle of the night when I'm getting a snack.
But I just thought, if we have a camera in the fridge, what about what's in your cupboard? So I feel like, I don't know, Samsung, maybe you need to make a camera for inside the cupboard. They probably already have one of those.
Well, they can't
sure that you've got enough rice.
They can't sell. I tell you what, as the parent of teenage children, I wouldn't mind a camera that would tell me who left the empty packet in the pantry. So maybe.
What news items have you got this week, Steph?
Okay, super exciting from my side. I got an email in my inbox with the latest, basically announcing that the Cannes dates are being confirmed for next year.
Yes, we can re-record our really cringy dance that we did at the after party. I surfaced that video and We'll have to share it again. It's the cringiest thing that I've ever done, Steph.
Yeah, I happened to find I found another dance the other day that I did at the marketing awards, which was worse. So rest assured there are worse videos than my phone. So yes, first passes for the Cannes Lion for Net 26 go on sale on the 7th of October. And then basically there's a 3-month period of time where they reach out to people for content to go and speak at the event. Yeah, so early scholarships, I believe, close by the 31st of December. So that's super exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing that I did today was, obviously you and I are recording this podcast at South by Southwest Sydney. So I wanted,
Yeah, so we're going to be there live at Claire Hayes' house on Wednesday of the festival. What date is the Wednesday, Steph?
It's the 15th of October, which is, I think, 7 days before my birthday and 10 before yours.
Yes. And we will be live at South by Southwest. We are obviously the highlight of the entire week. But who else is going to be there, Steph?
Okay, so one of the reasons I was looking at what was happening with South by Southwest was to kind of get a sense of themes, because we want to make sure that the content that we produce on the day is really relevant to the themes for the rest of the week, which is great. And I personally had never been to a South by Southwest, so I wanted to understand a bit more. However, I was so excited to see there's a guy. Do you know who Mo Gaudat is?
No, I was looking at the notes and I thought it might be a typo, but tell me about Mo.
No, he's incredible. So I would describe him as a futurist. He's ex-Google. He's been interviewed on Stephen Bartlett's Diary of a CEO several times, and his podcasts are really scary because they're scary but inspiring at the same time. He spends a lot of time talking about the future of AI, and he talks about how we'll go through dystopia before we get to utopia and things
I think we're living in dystopia now, Steph.
Yeah,
this feels very dystopian.
Yeah. And so he's anyway, what I would say without going too far down this rabbit hole is he's a really, really big brain. I would be super excited to see him. Unfortunately, I'm actually not going to be landing in Sydney and I'm going to miss his talk, but I will share with you some of his episodes because I think he's amazing. He's super interesting to listen to about the future, I guess, and the part that AI will play in the world. So yeah, those were kind of the two things that were exciting in my world.
Brilliant. So
Great.
Is the message positive from Mo overall, or are we all going to die?
I don't think we're all going to die.
Well, we're all going to die someday.
Eventually.
Maybe. Is AI going to kill us, Steph?
I don't think so. I think we'll be okay, but go to South by Southwest and find out. That would be my advice.
Exactly.
Book a ticket.
So what are we talking about this week, Steph?
So this is I say this every week that it's a great topic, but we want to just dive into the role of what a chief marketing officer really is. And we touched a little bit on marketing organizations last week, and we kind of got a little bit around team structure. But of course, who sits at the front of the team? It's often the chief marketing officer, the CMO, possibly the head of marketing. And there's lots of different ways that can take shape. And I think I've certainly been in a lot of conversations this year that are talking about maybe some of the challenges that are facing CMOs these days. So we'll have a bit of a dive in and talk about what goes into that in an organization. So without further ado,
let's do it. Break down the role of a CMO, Steph. What does a CMO do? Okay,
so classically, but in the traditional sense of the word, ideally a chief marketing officer is clearly, by what you would say is they're in the C-suite, and by nature of being in the C-suite, one would expect that a CMO would be sitting at the executive table, right, on the senior leadership team. Mm-hmm. So first and foremost, in some of the conversations that I've been witnessing this year, that's not always the case. And so actually, unfortunately, there's a higher propensity for the CMO role to be the one C-suite role that potentially isn't sitting on the exec team.
Do they still call them the CMO and they're not on the leadership team?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so partly that has been a problem, I think, because it hasn't been felt like it's part of it depends on the organization that you're in, right? But you would always find the CFO, you would always find the COO, the CEO, for example, sitting on the leadership team. But the profession of marketing or the discipline of marketing at times has been the one that's been like, well, it's just slightly sitting underneath. It's not, it's not seen as being as the most serious of roles. So the first thing I probably would want to say is that in order to affect change in a business, if that is the intention, if you're going to have the title of CMO, one would want to go to a company where you are sitting on the senior leadership team. I think that would be the first thing.
And that goes for if you are the potential CMO or if you're working in marketing for that company, that's a good indication whether you're going to be valued in that organization.
Absolutely. That's exactly right. Now, what I just wanted to share with you, there was a really, just coincidentally, there was a post that I saw on LinkedIn this week that I wanted to share with you. And it was just about maybe the definition of CMO potentially getting a bit muddied at the moment. And take this with this is one person's observation on LinkedIn, but I thought it was really interesting. And I'll just read a little bit of this post out. So this lady, I believe, is in recruitment. And she said, I've been having numerous conversations with CMOs, heads of marketing, and senior managers who are frustrated by what looks to be a senior role on paper, only to discover that the salary package is well below market, with GM CMO roles being pitched at 180K base plus super, and heads of marketing at between 120 to 140K base plus super. And what that's saying is there seems to be this real blending, or this observation of this lady is, in traditional sense, you would be expecting a CMO to have a much higher salary, cognizant of what you'd be expecting a CFO or a COO, kind of if you're thinking about them being at the same level of seniority. What she's really talking about here is how there seems to be lots of titles being given out with these, like you're a CMO or you're a head of marketing, maybe to somebody who's only had 4 or 5 years experience potentially in market. And the question here is whether we think that's right or wrong. And it's creating this confusion where a CMO role potentially isn't a CMO role in the way that we would expect.
Well, it could be both ways. I mean, firstly, it could just be job title inflation, where they're actually expecting someone with 10 years experience to come and take the role and only pay them that amount. Or it could be, as you say, it could be more, bring someone into the role that doesn't have the experience that's required. These things are really complex, and I don't think it's just marketing that is having this situation. Giving people big titles is often a way to maybe not compensate them as much.
Yeah, exactly. So look, I'm not going to get too political on it, but I just thought it was really interesting. And I think possibly a watch out for if you are in the market and looking at roles on Seek, whether you're seeing a trend, not just in the CMO level, but generally speaking, people asked to be given heavy hitting titles, but maybe that it's not exactly lining up what we traditionally see. So let's talk about a little bit, what would we be expecting a CMO to do in a business, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, I see the CMO as, and I'm very biased here, it is the best role in the C-suite. It is the growth engine of the business. The chief marketing officer is all about how we shape the business so that we can win customers, we're building markets, we're unlocking value. It's really that key growth role. And it is so important for the business. And it is the business, it's the role of opportunity and possibility. And CMOs, good CMOs, see what could be. So, they are referred to as the coloring department for a reason. They are fun.
Stop it. Stop.
These are fun roles. These are positive roles. It's that market creator. It's about what could be, not just what is, and translating vision into a market opportunity. And it really goes beyond marketing as well. Modern CMO really connects customer insight, brand, sales, product, and digital into one growth engine. And they are the voice of the customer at the top table. Yes, the chief operations officer will have customer complaints usually, which is still the voice of the customer. But, the chief marketing officer has the voice of current and potential customers. They will be tapping into that NPS data and their product feedback, but really ensuring that the decisions are anchored in the real needs of the customer and not just those internal assumptions about what we think the customer wants.
I wanted to talk a little bit about that because you're absolutely right about being the voice of the customer. I think we've said that probably just about in every episode. So one of the things I wanted to highlight is the importance of your tech stack and the importance of the platforms and things that you're using. In this day and age, you almost can't have a voice of the customer without having some form of software. And I think that is true even if you're a small business. And I want to point out that the role of a CMO is not to really just think about what's happening in the market now, but when you get to that C-suite, what you're doing is you're looking forward. So you're probably looking forward at least 2 years in advance, hopefully 5 years. And I think your job as a CMO is to look at all of the sources of data that you're sitting on, which is where the information about the customer is coming from, and really thinking about how whether your data platforms or your tech stack is going to allow you to achieve the goals and understand your customers in the future. And I think that's probably one of those key differences between just being a leader executing in the now versus strategically thinking, okay, well, we can see that social media, like, the rise of AI, the customer platforms, the algorithms changing. How do we step change our marketing approach to prepare and understand those customers in the future?
And it is changing so quickly.
Yeah.
And what do you feel are the ideal attributes of a CMO? Like, how many years experience would you expect a CMO to have, Steph?
Oh, you mean just generally in market, just in terms
Yeah,
of...
more than 4, obviously, based on your previous comments.
Yeah. I think every CMO that well, speaking from my experience, CMOs are really senior people. So every CMO that I've ever worked for, and bearing in mind my background is probably larger businesses, they're incredibly experienced in marketing. They've often, actually what I've often seen too, is to get to C-level, they've often had to have a stint in sales, interestingly enough. So they've spent some time at the front line and they've understood the sales process because, and this is a big debatable thing sometimes, is it better to go in a straight line all the way up to chief marketing officer, or do you take a sideways step?
Always sideways step. I love a sideways step. And I think it makes the chief marketing officer much more well-rounded, and it also gives them perspective of the other leaders that are sitting around that table with them. It is, it can potentially also, especially if they're working in finance or ops, give them that really strong data platform, which is needed for a successful CMO.
I don't think, so probably sidestepping your question a little bit about years of tenure, but what I would also say is I don't think you can be an effective CMO if all you've done is some big blockbuster advertising campaigns. I think you need to understand the commercials and the financials as well. I don't think you get the right, well, this is my controversial opinion, but it can be because it's our podcast.
You're so controversial, Steph.
Yeah, but I think I don't think you should be sitting in that CMO seat if you don't know how to read a P&L, if you don't understand how the business works, the operation side. I would really challenge that.
100%. But at the same time, still being customer obsessed. I mean, the best CMOs that I've met are those customer obsessed ones. They want to know the customer. They're out there. They're in the store. They are talking to customers. They really want to get to know who they are marketing to, and they're really growth driven. So accountable for their revenue impact, the health of the pipeline, and their market expansion roles.
Yeah.
And someone that also has a vision. So, there are a lot of leaders that struggle to really articulate what the vision should be. And a great CMO is able to see those long-term opportunities, working with their team to understand where the market is going, where the opportunities sit in the market, what their competitors are doing, and especially where there are gaps in what their opportunities are doing. And they are able to bring the rest of that leadership team into position to capture that growth.
I think the CMOs that I admire the most would be the ones that have made really bold decisions. I think that can be really hard because sometimes the company that you're working in might be relatively risk adverse, or you're working for a bank, for example, and the buck stops with you. So when you're in that leadership position, essentially, if you've made a really big call and you've said, look, the future is here and this is what we need to do, we need to pivot into this space, and that doesn't work out, I think the risk and the reward thing of being in that leadership position is you're either going to be with a company that will go, that's fine, we support, okay, well, maybe that was the wrong call, and pick yourself up and dust yourself off, or you're out the door. And I think the minute you put your head up above the pulpit and you are the person in charge of that marketing team and you've made a big, bold decision, that's the risk that you take.
And, it's not done. Like, you have to take that risk. And you have to read the data and, you trust your gut, but you also collect data along the way. And to quote friends, sometimes you have to pivot. And I think a company that pivots well and a CMO that is able to pivot when they need to, that really can get you back on track, because we all are making assumptions about what the future is going to hold and what AI is going to do. And sometimes you have to make a stand, make some choices, but be ready to pivot when you need to.
So do you know what allows you the right to pivot, Ben?
What, Steph?
Having the trust of your CEO and your CFO.
This is
So,
true.
yeah.
And the trust of the team that's behind you. So you have to have, as a CMO, an amazing team of people that don't just blindly follow you, that challenge you, but also support. And you have to have that mutual trust with them, because when you do need to pivot, you all need to pivot quickly.
Yeah, agreed. So, and I think that probably leads me to another point here about the leadership journey, is that often at that level, so many decisions are actually made. It's the relationships that you have cross-functionally. So I think we've talked a little bit about this, but really, really key if you're sitting at exec level is the relationships that you have outside of the board meeting, the relationships that you had outside of those big meetings are the ones that allow you to make those decisions. And so the sooner you can prove as a leader of, a really senior leader in a business that you can back up what you're saying by delivering against a project or providing results, you'll probably get given a little bit more freedom in the future to do those big pivots. But you do, and I heard this from many CEOs CMOs, that it's really important to have that relationship with the CFO in particular.
So speaking of pivoting, what changes when you become a CMO?
Well, evidently, it's quite lonely. And I think this is the other thing. So, you and I are marketers. What do we love? We love doing marketing. We love doing all the fun stuff. And the surprise...
Yeah, someone else can do the doing, to be fair. No.
I do all the doing on the podcast. Right?
Shade, Steph, the shade.
Just like the shade on your face, Ben.
We're going for it today.
Ben's growing a beard, just for anyone who's not watching us on YouTube, and it's quite a treat. So moving on. Basically, if you really love the thing that you do, which is the craft of marketing, often what happens when you hit that senior leadership position is you don't do that thing anymore. You have to get other people. You've got to trust other people to do that thing. And you don't have to know all of the ins and outs of the tech necessarily. You don't have to be right. In fact, you're better served to not be in that detail. You have to let your team do it. That would be my observation.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a balance. I think you need to know what good looks like. And that comes from experience. It comes from working with best marketers and collaborating and doing the doing. But as a CMO, you're moving from execution to influence. So yes, you're spending less time doing, but more time aligning, persuading, and guiding. You still need to have the marketing strategy, and you still need to have an opinion, and you still need to be able to QC things at scale. And because everything that is happening in your department is on you. The buck stops with you. Every campaign, every piece of comms, if your team is making it, your name is on it. And if it is not good, you will be answering it to the leadership about it.
And in this day and age, and I think I've seen a lot of this in the last 3 months, you might have to make some of your team redundant. You might have to restructure your team. Again, coming back to that 5-year strategy, it might be your job to decide who's staying, who's going. Have you got the right team for the future? So you might have to have those really, really tough conversations.
It is tough. It is tough and lonely. But if you've got a great marketing team, it can also be the amazing change that you need to get your strategy out. So everything that you've been building in your career, you're moving from being a manager to being a change leader. So you're really becoming the driver of all of the change that you want to see within the organization, whether that's digital, innovation, product, marketing, new channels. This is the opportunity as the CMO to influence the organization in the direction that you want to take it.
Do you know what else I would say I think is super important in a leader is the ability to make a decision. And I don't know if that resonates with you, but I have worked for some CMOs and some business owners who cannot put a line in the sand. And there's a lot of dithering. And I don't know, maybe sitting at a different level, it's hard to understand. But true leadership for me looks a little bit like I'm setting the strategy and I'm gonna lead from the front, and everyone come behind me, and I believe in this strategy, and I've got you if this doesn't work. But I've seen a lot of fence sitting in my time, and I have found that really hard to understand.
But I don't think it's with. I'm a big proponent of working with people. And even when you're the CMO, yes, you're leading the marketing organization, but you have to have such good trust with your team so that you inherently trust that they're going to be doing a great job so that you don't have to check each piece of detail. And you have to be brave and you have to trust your team. And you also have to accept that you are going to make mistakes and you need to make sure that you've got that leadership support, both the team that's working for you, but also at that leadership table, that you have that space to make mistakes, because there are going to be campaigns that don't move the needle the way that you think it is. There are going to be technology investments that don't pay off. You need to have that buffer zone to make sure that you can still move forward and be successful.
Yeah. And I think don't underestimate the power of speaking. So there's the ability to speak to your team, your direct reports. But if you are managing a really large team, what I've seen work really well are they're called skip meetings, where you skip the person that's reporting into you, but you go the next layer down. Mm-hmm. And you might do it relatively infrequently, maybe once a quarter, or you'll just check in with people who are reporting to the people that report to you. And that's a really great way to kind of really get a sense of what's actually going on. And in this leadership panel that I was on Thursday, there was a really senior consultant, and he said what he does is he would have these sessions with the team. And he said if things came up more than once, that was a really good indication from different parts of the team and the business. It was a really good indication that there was actually an endemic problem. And so you can, it's kind of that, the voice of the customer, but it's the voice of the team. And sometimes you'll find things out that your direct reports potentially are too scared or don't feel comfortable sharing.
And thinking about wider than your direct reports, when you are a CMO, what do you think is the most important relationship in the business?
Oh, well, I would always say the CFO.
I would disagree completely. I think the CEO is the most important. You definitely have to manage the CEO first, because if you don't have the CEO on side, maybe you'll get away with the CFO.
I say that because I've worked with some really great CFOs and some really challenging ones. And it can be like chalk and cheese. Like it can be.
And you make a good point, that chalk and cheese point. If marketing is the department of fun, the finance department is where fun goes to die. So I think that is, there is that natural tension. It's a personality tension. It is a financial tension. It is a growth tension. But a really good leadership team will have the space for the right communication and making sure that there are good relationships across that group are important. Not in the way that we saw at the Coldplay concert, much more professional.
What do you do if your leadership team is dysfunctional?
Communication. I mean, it's the only way. I think that the job of the CEO is really to make sure that he or she has the right team, and it is the CEO's job to make sure that people are functioning in the right way. And if it's not working, it is up to you as the CMO to address that with the CEO or maybe even the board to make sure that the right people are communicating in the right way and doing the right things to bring the company forward.
I think the other thing to think about too is that sometimes when you get to that level, your goals may not be the thing that are aligning with where the business wants to go to potentially. So I think it would be fair to say that there are times when what marketing wants is not actually what's potentially best for the business in the short or the long term. And so being really realistic about your sphere of influence. I'm trying to be really general here, and it's hard to do it without an example, but know which battles to pick is probably a better way of framing that up. And you can't go in and expect to win every discussion and like marketing won't always get what marketing wants. Operations probably won't get what operations always want. If you think about what the CEO is looking for, there's a certain amount of money to be invested in the business to achieve the growth goals. And so sometimes that might mean we have to sacrifice some long-term brand building in order to build a new plant to manufacture something or whatever that might be. So I think a little bit of really understanding the bigger picture, I think, is really helpful as well. It's not just what marketing wants, but fight for it, but if it's not the right thing.
Yeah, I would disagree on that. I think that there is a natural tension on the board, and as the CMO, it is your job to fight for what is right for marketing and the customer. Each member of the leadership team should be comfortable with that tension. And as the head of marketing, you need to go in to fight for resource and budget to make sure that you can effectively deliver what the organization needs. And you can't, yes, you're going to wager and you're going to do trade-offs and things like that, but you can't give up. You have to fight day in, day out for your team and for your customer.
Go.
Never give up. Never give up.
Never give up. Ben, surprising that Ben has taken the optimist role in this podcast.
Yes, yeah.
And yet, look, what about CMO tenure? Because I think I can give examples. Astrid Burgess at ANZ, for example, she's been with the business with ANZ for 18 years.
As a CMO for 18 years?
She hasn't been CMO for that length of time, but she has a decent stint. And then other things that are quite often the case is maybe a CMO will only be in that role for 3 to 5 years.
It depends, as everything, Steph. It depends. I mean, it depends on the needs of the business. It depends on the career stage that person is in. There are some CMOs that will change every, 3 to 4 years. And, there are advantages of that. You, as a CMO that's moving through companies, on a 2, 3, 4, 5 year basis, you're bringing that thinking, that passion, those new ideas, the new way of working, and that can be right for that individual and for that company. But I've also seen in Astrid's case where you have a really dynamic, passionate CMO or marketing leader that knows the customer, that knows the team, that is really effective, that can run a really successful organization. And really, at the end of the day, it is what is best for the business. What kind of marketing leader do you need? And it has to be win-win. It has to be a win for the organization and a win for the individual that's in that role.
Because often you can argue it both ways, and I think there's merit in both. You hear people go, we need some fresh thinking. We need somebody to come in and, that used to be said that marketers shouldn't stay in a job for too long because you just got stale and you weren't keeping up. I don't know that I would say that that's true all of the time. And then
there's different ways to stay fresh. You don't need to leave an organization. You can, go and do some education or, have a chat with Steph.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing is there's also an argument to be made to say what you ideally want is a CMO who is in a role for a decent length of time has to live with the decisions that they've made, right? So you go into a role and you're making a decision that's going to impact the business within 5 years. Well, it'd be quite good if the CMO was around to see the impact of that change. You kind of know that they've got a stake in the game, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah. And that goes for any leadership as CEOs as well.
Yeah, 100%.
If you are a CMO, Steph, or you're a wannabe CMO, what are some tips that you can give to marketing leaders or CMOs?
So the very first thing would be don't just rely on strategy and creative to get you through. I would say learn to read a financial statement, understand a P&L, at least be able to read some financial documents, because when you get to that level, that's 100% an expectation. What about you?
Yeah, similar. I would say anchor everything in growth. So talk about everything that you do, not in terms of impressions and all of these things that the rest of the leadership team really does not care about. Talk about growth, talk about revenue, talk about pipeline, talk about customer value, market share. Don't talk about activity. Everyone's busy. But focus on growth, earn that financial credibility early. Definitely that strong relationship with the CFO that you talked about, Steph, and be that customer's voice in the boardroom. And I would say actually bring the customer to the boardroom. So the more that you can bring quotes, videos of customers, don't just say that you represent the voice of the customer, actually bring the customer's voice into that room. That's what's going to shift the needle for these CMOs. And it definitely balance brand as well. So there's a lot of marketers that lean hard into performance. So they get, they swing too far in the revenue direction. You still have to be the brand champion and you have to bring and prioritize the brand. So when you get that buy-in from the leadership team, making sure that they are thinking about long-term and they're not just thinking about next quarter's revenue. You can't let either dominate. It has to be that balance.
Yeah, I agree. That's some good tips. And I think just remember too, you're not the one, you shouldn't be probably the one doing shots at the bar at the end of the night with your actual marketing team. I think once you hit that level, you probably need to step away
You
from
still
the
want to
team.
be fun, Steph.
Yes.
No, definitely. Still not the end of the night. Do the shots at the start of the night with the CFO and then take the cue from the CFO.
Then take yourself home before you get messy. That's my advice. It's a top tip.
I love that. We don't need that. We don't need to see that. No Coldplay. Thank you.
No, that's right. Right. What are we going to talk about next week, Ben? Let's roll into that.
Oh my God, next week, print is back. So you used to be on the leading edge if you were digital. Digital was the place to be. Digital was the new marketing strategy. Everything's kind of digital now. Now print is back. So print is getting attention. It is holding attention. So next episode, we're going to talk about everything from in-flight magazines to the Costco brochure. Print is back.
Excellent. Look forward to it.
Have a good week, everyone. Thanks, Steph.
Thanks, Ben.
See you soon.